lost my parents, that pain made me who I am. I spent a lifetime trying to right the wrongs of the past, as if fighting crime would bring my parents back. You actually did it.
I can't imagine what you've been through.
I love you, Monkey.
You lost both parents in one day.
Barry! Call 911 now!
I went back in time to save my parents. But instead, I completely broke the universe.
If you went back and changed the past, this world must die. You changed the future.
Do you know what this symbol stands for?
Means hope, right?
I will help you fight Zod.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
I have to undo what I did.
These scars we have make us who we are. I'm not meant to go back and fix them. Don't let your tragedy define you.
What did you do?
No matter what we do, we're not going to be able to fix this.
No! Nobody dies!
You're strapped to your parachutes.
And where's yours?
What's going on, world? It's your boy Kuya P. This is Nerds Rule the World, and I'm here with Heather. How are you today, Heather?
I'm good. Ready to talk some comics today.
Yes, because as the people see on screen, which way it is, I don't know. We're on Zoom, people. You know, we're living in a new world, and we have a special guest. As you see behind me, we have coming soon from DC Comics, The Flash, the fastest man alive. So excited, getting us pumped for the release of the brand new film, giving us Flash in the cinematic universe of DC. And I have the writer, Kenny Porter. Thank you so much for your time today, Kenny.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you both about it. And this is a book I'm super proud of and had a ton of fun making. So I'm glad so many people are jazzed to read it. And it's a great opportunity to be able to talk to you guys and tell more people about the book.
Excellent. Well, we're ready to talk about it. We're excited. We're moving fast. So you're going to get
I'll try to keep up. I've had a lot of coffee today, so I'm sipping another cup right now. Like, you need me to be on there, I'll be on there. I'll match the level, man. You just set the tone.
Let's go. All right. So you get the call. You get the hit up from DC Comics. They're like, hey, Kenny, we love what you're doing. We want you to, touch our Flash a little bit. We've done our history of DC, Flash has been around for a long time, very pivotal character in the comics. We now have this cinematic version, but now we got to bridge that a little bit. Right before we get to this new film, what was that like getting this assignment and then, putting your stamp on it?
Oh, yeah. So it was an awesome experience. I got to work with an editor that I love, that I worked with a bunch named Andrew Marino. And he called me, was basically like, hey, we're looking to do stories as a prequel to the upcoming Flash movie. And we want it to kind of be a little bit different. And we want to kind of showcase how the Flash gets from the footage that we've seen so far to the established hero that will be in the movie. And too much to my surprise, they gave me a lot of creative freedom with it. They were like, what would you do with it? What kind of stories would you like to tell? And in talking with Andrew with it, I was like, well, I'd really like to take an approach of sort of building up and doing 3 almost mini movies that are standalone, that anybody who's either read a Flash comic before or has never read a Flash comic could come in and enjoy early days of this version of Barry Allen. So I treated it really just like its own universe, and as if we were finally getting to see this Flash on their own. And I wanted to hit those like big moments that I love as a lifetime Flash fan, and that I know other people would enjoy seeing, because some of the most like fun stuff whenever you're getting to know a character are those moments when they're exploring their powers and learning a bit more. And so I took I'm a big manga and shonen fan, so I took a lot of inspiration from shonen manga and built into like slowly learning a new ability, and how does that affect like the current antagonist they have, how does that affect them emotionally, how does that fit to the overall story between like him and his father. So I basically took everything that I loved about the Flash and added it through that lens and through this kind of like this different universe version of Barry Allen, and mixed it all together. And like I said, I was really happy that they let me have a lot of creative freedom. Like I was like, these are the kind of stories that I want to tell. Like, is this okay? And Andy Muschietti, the director, like looked over it, was like, gave a couple of tiny little notes, but overall was really behind everything I wanted to do with it. So it was also an interesting thing because I didn't know what was going to happen in the movie. Like I knew
that was going to be a question.
So I knew broad strokes, but I had to just be like, is this okay for me to do? So that's how much creative freedom I had. Wow. And like my approach, like I didn't want it to, like I know some people might think like hearing it's a tie-in, that they might think it just recaps like everything that happens in the movie, or it's all just set up stuff, but it really is like 3 individual like full-on stories that I wanted to make kind of like an evergreen book that anybody could pick up if it was going to be their first Flash comic, or they just, like I said, wanted to revisit the early days of Barry Allen. So hopefully I pulled that off from what I heard, but that was my approach with it.
That's super cool. And I will tell you, for me, you pulled that off, because I was expecting, like what you said, you know, a lot of movie tie-in, you know, where we're doing reflections, but no, you man, and we'll get into it more, but yeah, you could just jump into each issue respectively without having anything else. And it was a fun ride for me. I literally just got done reading it right before the start of this interview. So kudos. Heather, I'm sorry. I think you were about to say something.
Well, it's just going off of that, you can really tell from we lost camera.
I'm still here. I accidentally bumped my space bar. That's all.
He's moving fast, Heather. He's too quick. He's on the Flash team.
Yeah, I totally fell behind there. I'm so sorry. And that chain of thought is now gone. Okay. What you can tell a lot from the comics that they are meant to be standalone, similar, kind of like an Elseworlds kind of story.
Exactly.
And it's one of those, by the way, I don't know if it was on purpose, but that One Piece like push in at the very first step in the very first issue with like all the punches. I don't know if that was on purpose, but I totally felt that.
It was, yeah. Like Ricardo is also like a huge anime and manga fan. And he worked on some of the variant covers and stuff for DC Mech, which I did, which is obviously like, I wear my like love of anime and manga on my sleeve as well as I do like my comic book fandom, obviously. So there was definitely some like One Piece, Monkey D. Luffy, like multiple punches sort of things going on there. For reference, so that was a good eye with that.
But it's one of those where you can I'm sure that it's not easy to be both in continuity and outside of continuity. Tell us the difference in writing a story in which you have canon and you don't.
That's a great question. Yeah. So, like I said, I had a ton of creative freedom. And what I tried to do was, the first with the approach was I watched all the footage that we'd had previously. And I was like, okay, if I were going to build this out, like you said, like an Elseworlds, that's kind of how I approached it. Like, let me imagine that the movies are just another set of comics. And this is like the next installment and like a new imprint sort of thing, so that I get in a good headspace to make sure that what I'm writing as a comic works as a comic and also feels like it fits there. So I tried to make sure that when I was doing it, I was trying to extrapolate from the starting point of like, if these movies are the beginning of the universe, like how does it bridge out and affect the other parts of it? So I started thinking about that and building it out. And I was like, well, if he was going to learn these 3 abilities, which the ones we cover in the book, it's been out for a while, so it's not huge spoilers, but like we cover him being able to like do the mock punch, like being able to change his density and hit harder, being able to phase through stuff, whether he wants to or not, which is a little bit of an emotional problem for him. And then also his after image sort of technique of like stopping and starting, moving so fast that he leaves behind copies. And so I was like, okay, well, in this universe, if we're going to have villains, who would be natural, like metahumans that would show up, what's the like level and like tiered system I could do to build him up, not just with the abilities, but also like if you're following along, like see how as a character he goes from not very sure of himself after teaming up with everybody, kind of overstressed now that he's putting too much on himself. And then finally, what does it look like when he's like confident, but maybe a little bit too confident after he's won a couple of fights? So like doing that, I was like, well, obviously, like physically, I think Girder would be an awesome villain for that. So I did him for the first one. For the second one, of like the amorphous feeling of things being too much and overwhelming, like I thought the Tar Pit would be great for that. So that's why I picked that villain. And then finally, like if he was going to fight somebody who was fully formed, the Top was a good choice because the Top is so organized and like builds a bunch of technology stuff and is also has a bit of a speed element of being able to turn so fast that I thought would be a good matchup. So I kind of like did this big web map of like, if I'm building out this character and setting him on his first adventures in this new universe, what makes sense like for him to grow as a person, but also just from an antagonist point of view of like what enemies would come his way based on this universe. So yeah, there was a lot that went into it, of my coffee fueled nightmares of writing stuff down and figuring it out, in order to make it fun, and then also make it felt like if it had been adapted from a movie that didn't exist, that it felt like it fit there with the other things.
Awesome. I love that answer about the Rogues Gallery, because we know how infamous Batman's Rogues Gallery is. But to me, Flash's Rogues Gallery is just as infamous, if you will. But one that I was confused on, because maybe I hadn't read enough Flash, was Girder. That was very interesting to me. And then we get a lot of his origin story in that kind of like first issue with his motivation. Why Girder? I know how you broke down why the certain villains for each issue, but can you specifically talk about that first issue with Girder and, making that kind of a point of the story with his origin as well?
Yeah. So I kind of thought that like up to that point, because a lot of it, like I said, was like him learning the new powers and abilities. Up to that point, he'd really just been running fast. So he was an unstoppable object, or an unstoppable force. So I wanted to put him against the immovable object, like to show that like that is not going to work for everybody. So putting in a villain that was like, it doesn't matter how fast you go, like the moment I'm able to just catch you, like you're in trouble, because I'm like, you cannot hurt me. You're just going to hurt yourself trying to hit me. And then giving him that same emotional thing where he also has like a father in a bad situation, I thought was just a good reflective thing to show that like throughout his career, he is going to fight these people, and there are people who are going to be villains, but they're often going to be misunderstood. And a big part of the Flash is like, he knows all of his villains very personally and often will like know everything about their lives. So like any version of Barry Allen just wants people to be the best version of themselves. So that's why I thought it was important that by the end of the story, when finally he hears him talk about, it's like, well, your dad's in the hospital, like that would be something that, Barry would latch onto and feel bad, even though he had to fight him and stop him. Like he would feel bad that somebody was going through something similarly. So a lot of that is what went into picking Girder, of just like putting the like unstoppable force against the unmovable object, and like how does he solve that with speed and with know-how with his new abilities. And then also just the emotional element of somebody else going through something similarly to him that builds up for the second one where he's a bit overwhelmed with it.
I think you nailed that. I just got to give you props on that. For that to be the first kind of issue in this, you also show that humanity at the very end. You give you all phases of a hero, if you will. We can run fast, like you said, fast moving objects, immovable objects, but then we get to the core of humanity, and then showing humanity that defines a real hero. So props on that. Two other big things, if we can like stay on the first issue. And I'm sorry, Heather, I know you've got a ton of questions, but like we have him being trained by Batman in this. And then we also get the ring. Can we talk on that?
Sure. Yeah. So I know it seems like a little bit weird that like somebody with powers would go to Batman for like advice, but I always really liked, and I put an Easter egg of this in the book, but like I always really loved the JSA character, Ted Grant, the Wildcat, the boxer. Because in a lot of old DC lore, like he taught a lot of the modern heroes how to fight, like taught Superman how to box and everything, because like there is, no matter how powerful you are, there's always going to be somebody stronger than you. So if somebody were learning and needed to know how to beat somebody stronger than them, Batman in whatever universe he's in has always gone up against people like who are better, like stronger than him, outnumbered. And this version, like in the footage that we've seen, like Barry and Bruce, like it was the first other hero that Barry met. So it makes sense that like the first person he'd go to for help would be Batman. And like I said, Batman, I think even in the story is like, I don't know anything about having powers, but I can teach you how to throw a punch. Like I can teach you how to hold your own against somebody stronger than you. So I thought that was a really good, like it played more into the relationship. I knew that relationship was going to be explored in the movie. So that was one of the lead-in things that I wanted to make sure happened, that we felt like they had more off-screen time together, like developing that friendship and that partnership. And then with the ring, that was one of the few like direct notes that I'd gotten, that like we want to introduce the ring in the costume. So the fact that I got to do that like before the movie, and we see that in the movie he has it, that was awesome. So that was just like a cool, like they were like, could you do that? I was like, say no more. Happy to do that and introduce it.
That's awesome.
That's
Heather,
very
I'm
nice.
sorry.
Good, good.
Okay, yeah. Well, so fantastic first issue. Like you killed it again.
Thank you.
Out the box, standalone. Then we get into issue 2. We're moving further, and like you said, I like how you kind of want to take us in phases. And as we bring them towards this new film that is dropping very soon, y'all. Let me plug that, as well as the collected edition on May 16th. Let's do some promo there. All right, issue 2, Tar Pit. Immovable object to now a guy that can also, if you get in that midst, but also we see a little bit more progression here. If you can kind of break down issue 2 for us.
Sure. Yeah. So with Tar Pit, it was playing on that, like I mentioned in this one, Barry's actually like not trying to search for new power. He's uncontrollably phasing because he's overstressed. He can't handle it. Just like similar to like what happened to Tar Pit necessarily wasn't his fault. And that he got changed, and that he's very amorphous. And changes to the environment. So the fact that Barry was going through that as well, but didn't really want to, I thought was a good dichotomy between the two different powers, especially because like you really shouldn't touch Tar Pit. So like having a villain that you can't touch and then having him explore the ability to phase and move through things, I thought was a great, like I mentioned, dichotomy between it, especially because like he was fighting something horrific and something horrific was happening with his body at the same time. And also realizing that like if he phases wrong, he could kill somebody. Similar to like if Tar Pit touches someone, he could kill someone. So like mixing those two together, I thought was a great way to show a mirrored image of like how great that sort of thing could be and how terrible that sort of thing could be. So that was really the impetus behind that. And I thought that like it would be great to have like a snarky, overconfident, like really, and Juan Ferreira did a like great job drawing a really horrific looking Tar Pit and like mean version. So I thought that was a lot of fun. And that was kind of like the idea behind that villain.
I dig that. Loving the art influences, and we spoke on with the first issue with Juan Ferreira, I think was artist on the first issue, if I'm not mistaken. You had a little bit of anime influences that Heather had brought up. Were there any kind of similar like notes when you send over your script to be like, hey, can you kind of maybe do this? With anything like that happening with the second issue? Like behind the scenes?
So actually for the first issue was Ricardo Lopez Ortiz.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And then
Ricardo Lopez.
Oh, that's okay. There were 3 different. I'll get to all 3 of them. But yeah, they were all great and awesome. And then Juan Ferrer did the second one.
Okay.
And with Juan, so I work full script, but in any script, in any way that I work with artists, I'm like, hey, if you have a way you want to do it that's going to make your artwork look better, just do that and ignore what I wrote. Like just use it as a guide. And Juan did his own thing with everything. He combined a lot of pages to make really cool double page spreads, added some extra moments of movement. He did that cool thing where Barry like actually phases out of the panel when he's in costume and like freaks out, and added that, which I thought was awesome. So he really did his own thing and added his own flair to it. And Jason Howard did the same thing in the third one.
I dig that. It's always like it's Christmas. Excuse me, wrong holiday. It's Christmas when we get pages back. I'm a writer as well.
I love Halloween too, so it could be either. Yeah, it's definitely. Christmas, Halloween,
especially
New
with the
Year's,
full-size candy bars.
One. Yeah.
Well, with Juan Ferrer, the Halloween part really kind of hits that because he's really good at those characters.
Yeah, he's great at the spooky stuff. I've seen his like that recent Spider-Man stuff he did with some of the horrific things, and it looks awesome. So he's really good at the spooky things.
Won't call out any other comic companies, but there's some good stuff. Go check out his work.
Yeah.
To lean into issue 2 a little bit though,
Mhm.
the personability, the emotion, Barry saw a lot of really humanizing elements in the second issue. How important was just the humanization of a superhero when you were writing these stories? I know we touched on it a little bit, but when it goes into the films, one of the big themes is that these are people who also have abilities that are also meta. So that is a very important aspect, and you can really see it in issue 2.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I put a lot of it in there. Like, I guess like my mantra for superhero comics has always been like big action, big emotion. Like the action is going to matter more the more we're emotionally attached to the characters. And a lot of those parts are the things that get me most excited, or the moments that I remember the most. Like a lot of my favorite like Superman moments are parts where he's not fighting anybody. He's just having a talk or being there for somebody. Or the same with the Flash family, of them just like being together and appreciating each other, being there for each other. So having those emotional moments are really important for me. And I try to put a lot of like similar things that I've gone through in my work. So, so similar to Barry, and I mentioned this in another interview, like I grew up with a father in prison. So like I understood what that felt like, and that relationship, of how like sometimes awkward that can be, and the different stresses that are like said and unsaid with it. And then similar to Barry, like I deal with a lot of anxiety and stuff because I will sometimes in work or in personal life, I'll take on too much, and I'll kind of start to, because I don't want to let anybody down, like I'll take on too much and I'll stress myself out. So I try to put a lot of that emotion in there, because I think we all feel those things. And it's like, that's the most important part of these stories, is to empathize with other people and realize that like we can overcome these things, that we can ask for help, that, you know, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and that a lot of stuff that you're going through, somebody else has probably gone through or is still going through it right now. So to hear that, like outside of the big action stuff, that that the emotional stuff really resonated with you too, means a lot. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think all of us can relate to being late to work, and just though I love the scenes that you had with him with his colleagues. And then when we move into the third issue, you know, now he's on time and now he's outshining everybody, right? It helps to connect. And so again, like your plan to deliver, make things standalone and connect with fans that might just be picking up this issue or that issue, succeeded. So bravo, sir. So moving into the third issue, and we get the top, and this kind of big, kind of like epic film in a way, is because we're all over the city. Can you break down the third issue, and just maybe like what hit you first for this climactic conclusion to your run on this, and having the top involved?
Sure. Yeah. So for this one, like I said, I wanted to kind of like pit Barry thinking that he's hit the top, that, you know, pun intended, I guess. Like he's at the level of being a superhero. He's completely confident. He's overconfident because he's balanced everything in his life. When his father calls out, like, you're being a little snarky there about the way that you're acting, even in his personal life. So having him feel like he's untouchable, and then bringing in Roscoe Dillon, like the top, and him being way more prepared, like completely ready to embarrass the Flash, and then also being overconfident, being like, I was just supposed to do a test for like black market buyers, but now that I know that I can like school you, like I'm gonna hold the whole city hostage. So then it also enters it into an actual, like, we've dealt with metahumans. This is the first like classic kind of Flash plot of like him having to stop a supervillain with, I'm gonna destroy the city level plans, which is another thing he's never dealt with before. So then, you know, at the exact moment where Barry's like, I got this all figured out, somebody's like, I will blow up the city with giant tops if you don't surrender. Yeah, it's like, okay, maybe I don't have this all figured out, and I need to rethink like how overconfident I've been. So yeah, I thought that using that version of like one of the overconfident, like classic rogues, who's overly prepared and has all of his stuff figured out and has an ability that can mess with Barry, was the perfect fit to have like be the final send off of him defeating like an actual well-prepared supervillain, and kind of rising both emotionally, realizing like, you know what, I'm never 100% always going to do everything right, but I will never stop and I won't give up. Like that's the most important part. And that's what his dad says, that like the Flash could learn from Barry Allen. to him, and having that and having him stand up and having the city back him, like finally enters into that, like, this is who this version of the Flash is going to be. This is what makes the Flash great, that like people are willing to stand by him because he will put himself in danger's way for other people. I thought was really important for that final issue, and to like finally give him that level up, to bring him to the level that they'll most likely see in the film.
Man,
let's use that to go into the big question then. How are you excited? How do you feel about seeing your Flash on the big screen?
Oh yeah, like I'm very excited. Like I'd seen all the trailers, and then like I saw the Super Bowl one, which was awesome. Like seeing like the two different. I mean, I'm going to assume people watching this have watched the trailer, so I'll make that assumption. Yeah, but like seeing the two different Barry Allens, seeing Supergirl, seeing like Michael Keaton's Batman back and like kicking butt, and it is awesome because like I grew up with the Michael Keaton Batman, so seeing him come back is a huge fun thing. So like seeing like all these classic elements of things that I love, and like things are pulling from storylines, and like it seems like it's going to be a fun, like emotional story about, you know, like the alternate timeline and trying to like prevent the death of his mother and like how that ruined his family. Like I'm like, I mean, that's what I'm gathering from the trailer. Like I said, I don't know what happens in the movie, but from what I've seen in the trailer, I'm excited to see what happens. So I'll definitely be going to see it.
Super excited. Yeah, we don't want to get you in trouble. No spoilers here.
I can't spoil anything for the movie because I haven't seen it. So
excited.
You're safe there.
Well, the third issue, again, going back to that, you know, you left us crying a little bit. I think you succeeded on all levels with giving a very hero story, a very human story, and then introducing us to Flash lore that we remember and can connect with. So if this was like your resume to continue, you know, after the fact, like DC, I'm talking Michael, who's on this as well. Everybody DC, give Kenny some more Flash. Like, I don't know if you want more, but I'm like you said earlier, you had a list and they were like, okay, Kenny, run wild. Was there anything you didn't get to do or want to do to just like, you know, close this out a little bit and sell on Kenny Porter writing some more Flash? Because I enjoyed it, Kenny, and I want you on more.
Well, thanks, man. I actually, so another, it's not a full series, but a short I'm doing a Swamp Thing and Flash team up that's coming out in a special in a couple of weeks with like the Prime Universe Barry Allen. So you read that. I would always write more Flash. I love the Flash, any version of them, Wally, Jay, Bart Allen, any of them. Like if anybody wants me on Flash, I'll have it. So always happy to do more. For this, I do feel like I got to do, like I said, I had a ton of creative freedom and I got to do everything I wanted. And it's also cool because they were double-sized issues. So they're like 40 pages. So I had way more room for like the artists to show off. And we had more room for way more emotional elements. Like I feel like I got way more story in there than maybe some other people would have gotten to with this opportunity. So I felt great that they were on board for all my creative ideas, and that they really supported like my creative choices. So I think with this version of the Flash, I got to tell everything that I wanted, but I really appreciate all of your kind words. And if you want to campaign for that, I will write Flash all day. So I'm very happy with that.
Love it. All right, y'all, put it in the comments. Let's like make that happen. Give Kenny more Flash. But I'm excited now to check out this Swamp Thing and Flash meetup. That sounds awesome. Heather, any more fans from a retailer perspective on Flash and with Kenny here?
From a retailer perspective? Sure.
Yeah.
Kenny, what's your opinion about supporting small businesses and buying comics at a small store?
I'm all for it. So I buy all my comics at my local shop, and I always like point people. Anytime people are like, where can I get your books? I'm always like, any comic book shop, any small bookstore, like go there first. I'm always a big supporter of local businesses and especially small comic book stores, because my favorite thing to do when I go to a new city is go find all the comic shops or all the new bookstores in general, just because like sometimes I just go to a bookstore without the intent to buy a book just because I like being in bookstores. So I want as many of them around as possible. So if everybody could go support their local comic book shop, their local bookstores, that would make me very happy.
I'm with that. All right. Well, Kenny, we are excited. This was a lot of fun. We got a lot of what we love about Flash in these books. So everybody, again, I'm going to remind y'all of The Flash, the fastest man alive, is arriving on trade paperback, collecting all 3 issues on May 16th, as well as getting you ready for the Flash film that we're all excited for. Kenny, man, this was a lot of fun and a true pleasure. And as you continue doing your thing, man, we'd love to have you back to give you your flowers and celebrate all your wins.
Well, I'm happy to come back. Anytime you guys want to talk, I had a great time. Kuya, Heather, ask me back whenever you want. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Everybody, I'll have Kenny's links in the comments below, or in the description below. And then you're going to write in the comments that we want Kenny on more Flash and every other comic because he's awesome. He gives us everything. We get the hero, we get the man or woman behind it. It's awesome. We get the full scope. I love it. Heather Hertz, your boy Kuya P. This is Nerds Rule the World. Kenny Porter, Flash, fastest man alive, right now on trade paperback, May 16th, y'all. Check it out. Kuya P, and I'm joined by the lovely Heather on my team, who is our comics retailer, if you will, and also kind of does a lot of our focused comics work for our outlet. So pleasure to have her here to help me talk to you. So thanks again for your time.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to both of you about it. I like your background, obviously. Excited
I'd rep a little bit. Awesome.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, thank you, Heather, and thank you, Kuya, for having me. I'm really excited.
Thank you. And thank you, Michael. All right. So I'm going to count us in to help me with my edit, and then we'll rock and roll and have some fun. All right. In a 1, 2, 3.